Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, bringing you one last news video for Final Fantasy XIV before I head to snooze and wake up early for patch 6.5. Now, I've already covered all of the major expected news, the live letter, the patch notes, the full patch notes, State of the Realms, the usual stuff. However, something you may not be aware of is that Yoshi-P and Foxclaw actually do their own version of a patch note reading once the full patch notes are out. So early this morning, they were reading through everything, discussing it, mostly just doing what you see me do. However, Yoshi-P had a few additional comments for stuff, especially some stuff coming in patch 6.5 and 7.0. Now, this is a quick summary of the highlights that was posted on Reddit by MKLBY1998. So, I'll include a link in the description. You can go there, thank them directly, Reddit Karma, whatever the going currency is on Reddit nowadays that, gets those upvotes and validation, all that good stuff. But I always appreciate whenever people post stuff on Reddit, the highlights, the translations, wherever they may be coming from, which may even be a source there with a click right there. So the first thing is actually something we already knew. There will be a branching cutscene path in 6.5's main scenario if you have completed Eden. Now, they mentioned this during the letter from the producer live, but the unofficial translation came off as something like, oh, there will be a dialogue, diversion, which I expected. Honestly, all I'm expecting is that they'll make brief mention of Gaia, not that Gaia will actually be present. It'll just be like, oh, it's good that you found me now. I was actually kind of bored because Gaia was off buying coffee biscuits or whatever. I assume like that's as in-depth as it'll be. I don't think it's going to be this like insane branching path like this kind of implies, but that is what he said, branching cutscene path, and that's exactly what happens, just not the first time. Now, the next thing is a mention of there are only 2 Mythology of the Realm quests, something that is confirmed in the patch notes, but their contents are quite long. Really excited for Myths of the Realm, Mythology of the Realm being the rough translation here, because the final boss is likely to be something that none of us are truly expecting, because we've already defeated 9 of the 12, and they teased a 13th entity when we actually did the previous 24-man alliance raid. So I don't think any of us really know what the final boss is, unless it's all of the 12 at once, which would be a really nice send-off, and honestly kind of what I'm hoping for. Now, next one. There's a lot of feedback asking for it. The team could continue to update Island Sanctuary after 7.0. So what they're clearly saying there is that they aren't currently planning on updating Island Sanctuary after 7.0. That's not really a surprise. It didn't really tick the right boxes for people looking for lifestyle type content, where it really is more of a workshop simulator and less of anything else. At least now you could decorate it and put all those minions around, but other than that, it's really just for the people who are consistent with it. A decent way to bring in extra materia, get some of those mounts. There's a few things of value, but definitely not a feature I would have seen them continue to update, in all honesty. That being said, the reason is actually very similar to stuff like we saw with Diadem and Eureka, and that there are plans for another major lifestyle type content in 7.0 similar to Island Sanctuary. Now that's actually the better piece of news, because one thing that we definitely saw with exploration zones over time was that they gradually took feedback and made improvements in some areas that made them more popular on content. I would say that Diadem was dead in a day or two for most people, except for maybe crafters and gatherers and the few diehards. But then, after Heavensward was done, Eureka definitely picked up a lot more steam. It lost a lot with Pagos, but regained it with feedback for Pyros and Hydatos, and of course, Baldesion Arsenal. But Bozja was swamped on content. Easy to access, really good for leveling, didn't have a separate leveling system or any of that, and to this day is still something that people use for leveling. It has its other issues that affect its longevity compared to Eureka, but point is, if this is supposed to be a direct improvement on Island Sanctuary or based on feedback from it, since it's a similar style content, we may get something that from the ground up is built to be a bit more what people are expecting. I'm of the opinion lifestyle content will always fall short in Final Fantasy XIV because the people who want that want very specific things and they want them to be robust. So I don't think simple and robust are 2 things they're ever going to get right at the same time. So I always think it's going to be a little lackluster. So that's not something I'm particularly looking forward to. Now, this was probably the biggest piece of news I saw people talking about. After I finished up my lunch post-stream, there are plans underway in 7.0 to be able to change the interior of a house to remove the columns or to change the size of the interior. Now, the first one is a long time request. People have been asking to get rid of those for ages because they want the option to make the house look however they want instead of having to design everything around the columns that are there. Now, that may bring into question the integrity of the house, but all things considered, it is a long-time request they are working on fulfilling. So I know a lot of housing enthusiasts who are going to be in love with that statement. Now, change the size of the interior is a very... we can't read too much into it because that is going to be something people are going to think like, oh, I bought a small house, but I have a large interior. I don't think that's what it means. What it means could have something to do with the way the space is used. Because again, much like the columns, there are pieces of houses that are kind of just consistently the same way. And so being able to adjust how the space is used more dynamically sounds more in line with what I would expect from this translation, this statement. Not, oh, I can buy a small house but have a large interior. That would be cool if they can manage that. Great. I think the inside of a house is instanced separately to the outside of a house, so it actually might be more technically feasible, but I'm just anecdotal. I obviously, I don't know anything about how it's actually designed on the inside, so I just wouldn't be optimistic on that front. But the first bit of news, very nice. Now, the next one's a little weird. For 7.0 on Reels, it's possible that Endwalker level 90 fights could be updated for 100. Now, I see the appeal for that on a development side. It's probably much easier to upbalance something from level 90 to 100 than, say, 70 or 80 to 100. That being said, nobody wants Endwalker on Reels to just come back in expansion later. They're barely going to be 10 levels old. People are still just going to be unsyncing them to get mounts from the previous ones. Why would they then do it to get Unreal in the same, breath? So I think the only way that's a good idea, the only way, is if they do 2 Unreals per patch. I'm of the opinion Unreal, the addition should be permanent for the remainder of the expansion. So when they add the 6.1 Unreal, then, that Unreal is there until 7.0. I guess in this case, 7.1 Unreal stays until 8.0 and then goes away. And then the 7.2 one gets added on and 7.3. And then every week, I'd like it to rotate between them instead of just being the one for, 20 weeks, 19, 20 weeks straight and then changing. That's just my opinion. But if they decide to still keep rotating them, they have floated the idea of doing 2 per patch instead of 1. That is the only other way I see this being kind of okay, is if they do 2 per patch and then they still cycle out. But even then, I'd rather they just go through some of the old stuff. There's a lot of old fights that haven't been there at this point, and I just don't think that's the right idea. Yoshida says that he thinks there will be a large number of jobs that have a new rotation and actions added in 7.0. So originally, Dragoon and Astra were people's big focus points, but the more people have thought about it, there are a lot of jobs that hit that kind of similar breaking point that Dragoon and Astra did, where they kind of need to be not necessarily redone from scratch, but they need to be at least revisited and retooled. I know Black Mage is high on that list because what are they going to get? A 3rd Xenoglossy and Ultima? Like, those are the kind of predictions people are stuck at this point, where they need to be such minor adjustments to old skills that the next 10 levels get really kind of almost lame in a sense. So this doesn't surprise me at all. And keep in mind that no matter what, this kind of would have been true. Even very simple jobs like Dancer and Bard got somewhat of updated rotations. They had to make adjustments. So this is, again, one of those super broad things where, of course, there will be new rotations and actions in 7.0. That's obvious. So we can't read to either extreme, but thinking about those extremes is not a bad idea either, because I do think there are going to be more rotation changes than people were initially expecting coming out of Endwalker and going into Dawntrail. And finally, in case you've been missing all my other videos, 6.51 is late October after the London Fan Fest. The primary reason being 6.51 is going to have PvP changes, and those PvP changes they do not want to implement prior to the London PvP tournament, because they would have, schedule-wise, they would have been like 3 or 4 days before, and that's toxic to PvPers to make sweeping changes a few days before. That's the main reason. So the Tuesday after, that also means Criterion variant, all the 6.51 stuff will be out at that same time. And then 6.55 is mid-January, likely a week or 2 after JP FanFest. They also communicated that that would be the plan to release the second part after JP FanFest. So that is also within what they've said. But I figured you guys might want to know about these extra statements. Besides, I got a little bit of time to kill. I didn't want to go to bed for like another half hour from now anyway, from when I'm recording this. So I had a little bit of time to kill, but I'm already tired. I'm ready to take my melatonin, pass out, and wake up early, just in case the servers come up early, even though I don't think they will. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Let me know what you think of the various things here, or what you're hoping for from the various things here. That final boss for Myths of the Realm, do you think Gaia will show up? I personally don't think so. Island Sanctuary lifestyle content. Of course, I know you housing enthusiasts are going to comment about the columns, and as well as this remaining stuff here. Let me know in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And I apologize in advance for your very busy subscription boxes over the next week. Anyway, with that, I will see you all in the next one. And until then, take care.